Day. I'd like to thank the Heart of Texas Church of Christ for letting us put this on here and for arranging for lunch and everything. And I know opening up the building on a Saturday, but Mother loved this place, and she was a member here after she moved over here from the Bastrop Church of Christ, and loved the people here, and I'm glad that we're able to do this here. So thank you all for coming. We're going to sing a song, and then I'm going to deliver a eulogy. Paul is going to stand up and give his remarks. I'm going to give mine, and then I'd like anybody else that has anything that they would like to share, come up and do so. We're going to sing another song, and then play a video that we have put together. And then Larry Foster, dear friend of the family, is going to deliver a homily, and we're going to sing another song, and then we're going to go get some lunch, okay? So that's the order of events. But I'd like to also thank everyone joining on YouTube. We've got a lot of family in Washington State that couldn't travel to make it, and I hope you're all watching. So, all right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. Thank you.
Good morning. Sing together, "When the Roll is Called Up Yonder." When the roll is called up yonder, and the time shall be no more, and the morning breaks eternal, bright and fair, when the saved of earth shall gather over on the other shore, and the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, when the roll is called up yonder, when the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. On that bright and cloudless morning, when the dead in Christ shall rise, and the glory of his resurrection share, when his chosen ones shall gather to their home beyond the skies, and the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, 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 I'll be there. Let us labor for the Master from the dawn till setting sun. Let us talk of all his wondrous love and care. Then when all of life is over and our work on earth is done, and the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. When the roll is called up yonder, 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 I'll be there.
Thank you, Kevin. All right. I had 10 songs on the sheet, but I took a few off, so that's probably for the best. All right, so I've got to find the one with the big print. I don't have my readers here. All right, so good morning and welcome. On behalf of my family, I would like to thank all of you for coming today to celebrate the life of Sherry Loiselle, better known to everyone as Stormye. If you called and asked for Sherry, she knew you were either a bill collector or asking for money of some kind. So somebody she didn't want to talk to anyway. But go ahead, come on in, folks. Thank you for making. I'm glad you can make it. Please have a seat. I'm so glad you can make it. Stormye was born on January 6th, 1940, in Kansas City, Missouri, to Edward Reno Atkinson and his wife Josephine. And incidentally, it was a stormy night, so that she was born on. Stormye was Reno and Josephine's fourth daughter, and all of them had names that began with the letter S: Shirley, Sandy, Sally, and then Stormye. Her time as the baby of the family was short-lived, however, and she was bumped from that position by her younger brother, Dwight. Not only was he a boy, his name didn't even fit the scheme there, right? So, but he himself lost that position to the true baby of the family, their sister Adelia. Being the fourth of 6 children, you might be able to understand why the birth order book by author Kevin Lehman was a must-read for my mother and her siblings. Reno and Josephine owned a rooming house in Kansas City, and Stormy's earliest childhood memories were of interacting with the boarders who stayed with the family at the rooming house. She also had fond memories of hiding her older half-brother Billy's shoes. She loved Billy, and she would hide his shoes so he couldn't go to work. And she didn't ever want him to leave. She'd get in trouble. She'd eventually give him his shoes, and he would go to work, but he would always come back home. So when Stormy was 3, and as she would tell anyone who asked, completely without her input, her parents sold the boarding house in 1943 in the middle of World War II and bought a 200-acre farm, sight unseen, outside of Yellville, Arkansas. Moving from a warm, loving home in a familiar city full of family close by did not make any sense to 3-year-old Stormy, and 83-year-old Stormy would still lament about getting no explanation then or ever. Regardless of the reasoning, the family packed up and moved to their new home on the farm. The family was in for quite a shock when they got to their new home and discovered there was an incomplete home because the second story of the house had not been finished. There was also no electricity or running water. There was adversity abound, but the family made the best of it, and that farm is where Stormy spent her formative years playing and running around in the country while her parents raised pigs and cattle. The only school in the area was a one-room schoolhouse, and having 3 older sisters, an inquisitive Stormy would read their school books when she wasn't sitting under the kitchen table listening to her mother Josephine and the ladies from the nearby farms talk about their lives. In fact, that is how she learned her mother Josephine was pregnant. When she asked the neighboring Kilgore girls what that meant, they informed her that pregnant was what happened before you had puppies. She was very excited because she loved dogs, but she was quite confused when her mother came home with a baby girl. And after getting over the initial disappointment of not having new puppies, Stormy became quite fond and quite close to her baby sister Adelia. When it came time for Stormy to begin attending school, she was already ahead of where she needed to be, which got her in trouble with the teacher, who initially put Stormy in the closet with everyone's lunches. After a young Stormy spent the morning eating and rearranging everyone's lunches, the teacher devised a new form of punishment, and she put her in a box. While in the box, Stormy would draw on the inside of the box and create a world for her paper dolls. After her mother Josephine got wind of what was happening and had a conversation with the teacher, Stormy's days in the box were over, but her love of telling stories and playing with paper dolls remained until she passed. In her early teens, Stormy was struck with what was at the time a mystery illness. She slowly began to lose control of her bodily movement and was eventually bedridden. During this time, her mother Josephine took her to all of the doctors that could be found in that part of the country, but none of them were able to diagnose or treat Stormy's condition. As all of this was transpiring, several people, including doctors, friends, and family, pushed Josephine to put Stormy in some sort of nursing or state home for the mentally challenged. Josephine, adamant that there was nothing wrong with her daughter's mental faculties, refused and kept fighting to figure out what was wrong with her daughter and make it better if it could be made better. Stormy never forgot the way her mother fought for her and protected her when everyone else had written her off as a lost cause. Everyone else except her sister Sally, who might as well have been joined at the hip. Eventually, Josephine found a doctor that knew exactly what was wrong with Stormy. Running barefoot on a pig farm, Stormy had contracted roundworms, which had caused a cascading set of complications. Once she was treated, the infection cleared, and she was on the road to recovery. And even though it was a long one, she worked hard, and she never lost hope. While Stormy was recovering and learning how to walk again, her mother decided Stormy could use something to boost her self-confidence, so she enrolled her in piano lessons. After a few lessons, the instructor decided that Stormy's fingers were too fat, and her future was not in the piano. So she suggested to her mother that she instead try singing lessons. This was a much better fit, and Stormy would go on to sing and put on various performances in Arkansas, and later in Washington, and in showers across the country. Between the end of World War II in 1945 and the time Stormy began high school in 1954, some things had changed in education in Arkansas, and they had more than one-room schoolhouses. They actually had high schools, and she began attending high school in the nearby town of Flippin. While attending Flippin High School, Stormy played basketball and was a cheerleader, which she thought was utterly ridiculous and a complete waste of time. But she did it anyway. In 1956, it was time for the family to move again, and they sold the farm and moved to Grandview, Washington, in the Yakima Valley. After moving to Grandview, Stormye spent her time away from school working in the fields, planting asparagus and strawberries and other fruits and vegetables, as well as working at the local Dairy Queen with her sister Sally. She graduated from Grandview High School in 1958, and from there went on to attend Central Washington State College of Education, now Central Washington University, that's a lot easier to fit on the bumper sticker, in Ellensburg, Washington, and where she earned her baccalaureate degree. While attending college, she liked to spend her time away from class going to dances at the local dance halls with her sister Sally and their friend Ardis. After graduating from college, Stormye took a few teaching jobs in Washington State before deciding to take a position with the Department of Defense School on Eielson Air Force Base in Fairbanks, Alaska, where she met the love of her life, a young airman named Harold Loiselle. When he got off the airplane wearing short sleeves, she thought, wow, who's that idiot? But she thought he was the most handsome idiot she'd ever seen. The two were married in 1966, and their journey took them from Alaska to Watertown, New York, where they welcomed their first son, Paul, into the world. After a short stint as a civilian, Harold rejoined the military, this time joining the United States Navy. After his initial training, Harold was sent off to Vietnam. After coming back from Vietnam, Harold and Stormye went back to Alaska, but this time to Kodiak. After Kodiak, Harold was transferred to Port Hueneme in the Oxnard, California area, where Stormye got a job teaching in Santa Paula, where she taught for many years. Shortly before leaving California and moving to Massachusetts, Stormye gave birth to a second son, me. While in Massachusetts, Stormye was a stay-at-home mother while Harold finished college at Northeastern University. Shortly after graduating from college, Harold got a job offer in Texas from someone whom he had served with in the Navy. Harold came down to Central Texas in the spring of 1981 and was enamored with the mild weather and the beautiful bluebonnets and other Texas wildflowers. When he got back to Boston, he told Stormye how beautiful everything was and how we had to move there. So the family packed up and moved again, this time to Smithville. When we got to Texas in the late June 1981, the mild weather was gone. The bluebonnets were all dead, and Stormye was looking at Harold saying, "What the heck did you get me into?" She was not impressed. Arriving in Smithville in 1981 and moving to Austin a year later, the family eventually settled in Bastrop in 1984. After settling in Bastrop, the family became members of the Bastrop Church of Christ, where Stormye was a member until she began attending this church, the Heart of Texas Church of Christ, where she was a member until she passed. Stormye started her first teaching job in Texas with the Smithville Independent School District in 1983, teaching self-contained students, and she taught there until 1986, when she began teaching at Bastrop Middle School, where she met many of you. While at BMS, Stormye's proudest moment as a teaching professional came in 1992, when she was selected as the Bastrop ISD Teacher of the Year for the 1991-1992 school year. She went on to win the Region 13 Teacher of the Year award and was one of 3 finalists for the 1991-92 Texas State Teacher of the Year and was selected as the runner-up. This was before Nancy Kerrigan, or we could have gotten her into that top spot, but thought it never occurred to us. But some of y'all got that joke. All right. She taught in 6th grade language arts at BMS until the 6th grade was moved to Bastrop Intermediate School. I don't know what year that was. You'll have to forgive me. But she spent she did spend money, but she spent many wonderful years teaching at BIS. And while teaching at BIS, she proudly earned her Master of Education in Teacher Leadership from Lamar University in 2010 at the age of 70. Stormye continued to teach 6th grade at BIS until her retirement. Her years after retiring were spent traveling with Harold, visiting family and friends, and enjoying her granddaughters Anne and Lillian. She spent almost every Saturday with them baking and decorating cakes, drawing and coloring, playing paper dolls and Barbies, and just laughing the day away. Stormye loved many things in life. Above all, she loved God. And then hamburgers. Then her family. Well, okay, she probably loved her family more than hamburgers, but it was close. While she loved her parents and her siblings dearly, the family she made with her husband Harold came first, and she always made time for her children and her grandchildren. She loved stories. She loved telling stories, writing stories, and most of all, she loved reading stories. Those days when she was incapacitated and couldn't move, reading was her only escape, and it became her lifelong passion. She also loved to dance. She loved to sing, and she loved to perform. She loved to embark on new adventures, and she loved to travel and explore new places with Harold. Those two had several adventures through the years. A year after Harold passed in 2021, Stormye came to live with me and spent her remaining years reading, playing with my daughters, attending softball games, soccer matches, band concerts, dance recitals, going to church, talking to her sisters, catching up with her friends, and just enjoying life. She cherished her friends and her friendships and always strove to treat others with respect and dignity. She enjoyed teaching, interacting with her students and their parents, mentoring new teachers, and she endeavored to impart her students with a lifelong love of learning, as well as to use education to make her community a better place for all. She is survived by her sisters Sandra Payne of Payette, Arkansas, Sally Edwards of Grandview, Washington, Adelia Goodhart of Sunnyside, Washington, brother Dwight Atkinson and wife Paula of Mesa, Arizona, my brother Paul and I, grandchildren Thomas, Mackenzie, Anne, and Lillian, as well as several nieces and nephews. She was preceded in death by her parents Reno and Josephine, her sister Shirley Powell, and her loving husband of 55 years, Harold. So, Paul.
Thank you, James. Good morning. Thank you all for being here to celebrate the life of our mother, Sherry Stormye Loiselle. I wish that I could say that I remember meeting her for the first time on a cold, stormy Saturday afternoon in December of 1968, because that was the beginning of a 55-year friendship with one of the best human beings I've ever known. Her absence will create a noticeable missing piece in my life, just as her presence left an indelible mark on every life she touched. Some of the fondest memories I have of Stormye involved traveling, whether it was by car, plane, or Greyhound bus. She and I covered a lot of miles. Some of the trips were routine, day-to-day commutes from Oxnard to Santa Paula in a green Pinto hatchback that had an 8-track tape player in it. We would listen and sing along with the likes of Simon and Garfunkel, and Waylon Jennings, whatever we happened to have in the car at the time. She drove me to daycare and then would go on to teach classes in Santa Paula. There were cross-country trips by Greyhound bus with just her and I, which, if anybody's traveled from Massachusetts to Washington State, that is a long, long bus ride. 5-hour layover in Chicago. We ran out of quarters, so we couldn't keep watching TV on the little booths that they had there at the terminal. But that was those were days, I'll tell you. And at the time, in that particular instance, she was traveling with James and I, and we were headed to Washington State because her father, Reno, had a second stroke, and so we were going to go spend time there. And so James, it was his first trip on a bus. Me, I was an old hat at it, so I was comfortable, and he was like, I'm bored, what do we do? So she had her hands full with the two of us, going from Keene, New Hampshire to Grandview, Washington, for sure. Of course, my mother saw all the traveling we did as a teaching opportunity, of course. And so I learned how to read by reading road signs. And so by the time I got to kindergarten, I was already reading, which is something that she loved and instilled in both of us, for sure. Now, of course, the best days were the days when my mom would take me to class with her, as opposed to me going to kindergarten. And I got to sit in her class and watch her teach. And to watch her teach was truly awe-inspiring. She was natural at it. She even had the ability to hold the attention of the troublemakers in her class and keep them on task, which, for you teachers know, sometimes that's a difficult prospect. For her classroom was a stage where she could perform every single day. And she did it, not because she thought it was a job, but for her it was a calling. And it was a calling that she answered for 54 years. She was loved by her students, and in her way she loved every single one of them. Although I was never in her class as one of her students, she was one of the best teachers I've ever had the privilege of knowing. And from these early experiences, I learned that in a significant way that I would have to share my mom with everybody else's children, which I was okay with. Stormye was a bright spirit who loved laughter and the sometimes absurd and funny little things that happen in day-to-day life. Raising two active and sometimes mischievous boys gave her plenty of opportunity to find humor in her life. There were also times when she was the source of the laughs, either by the words of a joke she could never quite remember the punchline to, or in some minor misadventure while traveling. Case in point, my mother liked to wear large, wide-brimmed hats when we would make our annual trips to Disneyland to keep the sun off of her while we're standing in line and walking through the park. But my mother also loved to ride the Splash Mountain and Pirates of the Caribbean ride. And for 3 years in a row, she sacrificed a hat to the Pirates of the Caribbean. The first time she lost the hat, there were some tears. She was upset. But the third year, as we're going over the final edge and down into the lower basin, the hat goes flying off of her head, misses the fingertips of the gentleman sitting behind us, and we watch it float ever gently and land in the water as we're listening to the animatronic pirates sing their jaunty sea shanty. But you know, that was just my mom for you. Those are the things that she thought were funny, and of course we did as well. Of course, today is bittersweet. I'm here with you both to celebrate and bid farewell to a woman who loved and was loved by many. To say that she will be missed would be an understatement that does not do true justice to the person she was for so many of us. Teacher, mentor, friend, grandmother, mother, wife, aunt, sister, daughter, and child of God. Although her passing is a sad event, Mom would not want you to dwell on the sadness in your heart, but to remember that she loved life, loved the people in her life deeply and sincerely, and she made the most of the time she was given before God called her home. So please leave here today with a happy or loving memory of Stormye in your mind and in your heart, knowing that this is how she would want you to remember her life. Thank you all, and God bless.
Thank you, Paul, for sharing your memories of Mom and sharing what she means to you. And I know it's hard to tell because we both retained our youthful good looks, but Paul and I are actually almost a decade apart. If you can't tell which one's older, I'm not going to tell you. I was what they call a late-in-life baby, or a pleasant surprise now. Back then, we were just called accidents. But the reason I bring that up is because Paul and I we all would joke about being raised by two different sets of parents. Our parents were different people when they raised both of us. They were younger and life in a different part of their life. Paul came along, traveling a lot, being stationed in different places, and when I came along, heaven. And as we celebrate your life today, I want to thank you for having me. I know everyone here today has their own special memories of Stormye. I would like to share with you some memories from my daughters about their grandma. My mom loved to laugh, and she loved to make people laugh, albeit it wasn't always intentional. I promise you, Paul and I did not compare notes before this, so we both came up with this independently. She would make Ann laugh when she called her Ann Lillian Snickerdoodle. And she'd make Lillian laugh when she would try to sing songs she had never heard before, which was one of her favorite things to do. She would just make up her own lyrics. So as we were driving down the road, Lillian would say, "Grandma, do you know the song?" "I've never heard it." And she'd sing right along. Yeah. Ann's favorite memory with her grandma was when she was younger and my mom was still teaching. And we would visit her in her classroom on weekends. And Ann would play in her classroom and get pushed around and up and down the halls of the intermediate school in the rolly chair. Lillian's favorite memory of Grandma is when she thought Grandma's hairbrush was a curling iron and got the brush all twisted in her hair and came out with the brush sticking out the side of her head asking for some help. I think I have that on video somewhere, don't I, Lillian? Yeah. Ann's favorite things to do with Grandma were baking cakes together, drawing and playing with paper dolls and Barbies. And Lillian's favorite things to do with Grandma were playing cards, drawing, coloring, playing with paper dolls, and writing books. Ann and Lillian both knew their grandma loved and supported them, cared how they were doing, and was always there and would make time for them if they needed her or if they just wanted to play. My mother used to joke with her students and tell them they could call her Mrs. Loiselle, but if they couldn't pronounce that, and trust me, after living in Texas 40 years, it still seems to be harder to say than it looks on paper, but that's another story. For some reason they couldn't pronounce Loiselle, they could call her Mrs. Beautiful. But if for some reason they couldn't find it inside themselves to call her Mrs. Beautiful, then they could always call her Wonder Woman. While she may or may not have been a superhero, I'll never tell, depending on who you ask, she certainly had some amazing abilities. My mother had an uncanny ability to read people. She would tell you that it came from working in the family restaurants as a kid, since she dealt with people from all walks of life and she had to be able to size people up after a brief encounter. I'm not sure if that was it or if it was just one of the gifts God gave her. Regardless of the source, when it came to people, Stormye Loiselle rarely missed the mark. Along with that, she also had the ability to listen to someone telling her about a problem they were facing and then cut right to the heart of the matter. I spent many afternoons in my mother's classroom after school listening to friends and colleagues talk to her about things, soliciting advice about how to deal with certain situations or with people, and I would watch and listen and be amazed at her ability to do that. She really had a gift for listening to people and counseling them. My mom genuinely liked people, and that came through in all of her dealings with them. I used to joke with Mom that she just had one of those faces that people saw and felt they could share their troubles with. But it was much more than that. People felt comfortable with my mother. And they felt comfortable confiding in her because they knew she could be trusted to keep things private, they knew she would be honest with them, and they knew she truly cared about them and wanted what was best for them. Growing up with Stormye as a mother, you rack up the fond and funny memories pretty quickly. And while I could easily spend a weekend sharing those, what comes to mind most often, and what has served me the most as I have journeyed through life, are the lessons she taught me. I never had my mother as a teacher while I was going through school, but that really didn't matter. The world was my mother's classroom. And there wasn't any place we went or any situation in life we faced from which she couldn't extract a lesson. My mother knew the difference between character and reputation. She taught me that a person's reputation is who other people think that person is, and character is who that person is when they think no one's looking. She always told me, look after your character, and your reputation will take care of itself. That's something I think about every day, and that's a lesson I teach my children. Always the teacher, she also never stopped being the student. And she taught me I could learn something from every person in life that I know. She would say, James, you can learn how to be, or you can learn how not to be. And that is a lesson I have taken with me all my life, and another one that I've passed on to my children. Of all the lessons in life my mother taught me, and forgive me if this sounds familiar, the three most important were faith, hope, and love. To us Christians, faith means the trust in God and His promises as made through Christ in the Scriptures, by which we are justified and saved. In non-religious contexts, it can mean a strong or unshakable belief in something. My mother was a faithful person in every sense of the word. And she believed and trusted in God and His promises. She also had an unshakable belief in her principles and in doing what she thought was right. She was loyal and faithful to God, to her husband, to her family, and to her friends. She brought me up to have that same faith and taught me what it meant to live that faith, because she led by example. Hope is that feeling that what is wanted can be had, or that events will turn out for the best. Over the years, when Stormye and Harold were having, shall we say, spirited discussions, if any of you knew my mother and father, you'd know what I meant if you spent any time with them privately, I would hear him say to her, "Well, you're just a Pollyanna." I wasn't quite sure what that meant because I'd never seen the movie. I had to watch The Parent Trap in school as a kid, and I figured seeing Haley Mills twice was enough. But after my mom passed and I was back here in Texas, late one night I was scrolling through Disney Plus, and lo and behold, there was Pollyanna. I thought, well, let me give this a look and see if I can figure out what my dad was talking about all those years. I thought I'd just watch a few minutes. For those of you that don't know or didn't know Harold, he had a type of cynical pragmatism people from the Northeast are famous for. Anyhow, I think I got 10 minutes into the movie before it was obvious what he had been referring to. For those that have never seen it or are unfamiliar with the character, Pollyanna was a very hopeful, optimistic little girl that always looked on the bright side. And that was my mother. My mom had a faith in God and His plan, and that inspired her sense of hope in any situation. She always believed that things could and would be better, and that everything would turn out for the best and according to God's plan. She had lived through some dark days as a child, and she had been raised by two parents that had survived the Great Depression. She knew the power of looking on the bright side and keeping a positive attitude, and that is the way she lived her life, combining her hope for the best with her faith that it would turn out that way, and she taught us to be the same way. Lastly, and most importantly, my mother taught me about love. My mother taught me what unconditional love is. No matter what was going on in my life, no matter how we were getting along, I never doubted for 1 second. I have never doubted for 1 second that I've been on this earth, that I was loved. My mother would say, I may not like somebody, I may not like the decisions they make, but that doesn't keep me from loving them. Love is a word a lot of us toss around, like a football at a backyard barbecue. But being a language arts teacher, my mother would tell you that love is a verb. It's something you do, not just something you say. My mother firmly believed that the embodiment of love is how we treat people, and she always made sure to show the people she loved that they were loved by spending time with them, talking to them about how they were doing, encouraging them in whatever endeavors they were undertaking, and just being there and supporting them. And of course, she would tell you she loved you, and you knew it was true because her actions matched her words. My mother is without a doubt one of my 3 favorite people. If you don't know who the other 2 are, you just need to hang around me for a few minutes. I am very proud of my mother. I am proud of the person she was, of the life she lived, how she was steadfast in her principles and her beliefs, and how she exemplified those beliefs throughout her life. I see aspects of my mom's personality in me and my children, and I can't help but smile. A sense of humor, a sense of adventure, a love for people, love for family, and love of God, most importantly, are things I all picked up from my mother. And even though she is no longer with us, she lives on physically in me and my children, and she is with all of us every day in spirit. I am the man and the father I am today because of her influence on my life. And I can say unequivocally, the best things about me came from her. Thank you, Mom, for everything, and we will continue to honor your legacy, not just with words, but with our actions. I love you. At this time, anybody that would like to come up and share a memory of Stormye is more than welcome to do so. We would gladly welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I'm usually not a fan of open mics, but this seems appropriate. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Charles. James and I we met in 1999, I think. We were all worried about our computers crashing at the time. James and I met when we were both students at Baylor University, and we became very close friends very quickly. And by extension, I became friends with his mother, with Stormye, very quickly also, which says something about her sense of hospitality, that it included extending friendship to her family's friends also. James mentioned, I wasn't going to come up here, but James mentioned something that got my mind spinning. He said she was always the teacher, but still a student. Words to that effect. As I was reading through this obituary, it occurred to me, probably never before in human history has so much change happened in such a short span of time. Think of the world that existed in 1940 and the world that exists today. Culture, technology, every facet of human existence is completely different than it was in 1940. It reminds me of the saying, may you live in interesting times. Not sure if that's a blessing or a curse. I think in Stormy's case it was a blessing. May you live in interesting times. So it occurs to me here is someone who we're celebrating and remembering who has all of this vast experience, almost unrivaled in all of human existence. But the compliment I want to give her by way of remembrance is to say that if I could put my finger on one quality, here was someone who had wit, W-I-T, which is an interesting concept. It's not being funny. A lot of people are funny. Wit, in my mind, is a combination of wisdom and humor. And it pulls together something both of you said about humor and about being the teacher. Stormy, I think, is someone who had humor. She could laugh and make you laugh. Lots of people are funny, but they have no wisdom. Lots of people are wise, but they're not particularly funny. Stormy was not one of those people. She had an equal amount of humor and wisdom, a person of wit. So that's my memory of her and compliment to her. God bless you, Stormy. Thanks.
Please. Yeah, please.
I'm just going to stay right here.
Okay.
Because I'm comfortable. Stormy taught both of my children, Johnny and Eric, and those two are cut both from a different cloth, but she loved them both equally. Johnny, everybody loved Johnny, and I'm talking about teachers. Eric, he was a different case, but I knew Stormy loved him. And I would go every day to pick up Eric, and Johnny, and we would talk in the classroom, so that reminded me of what you said, James. A lot of the things you said, I'm reminded about. And there was this one time, she told me, Eric has something for you today. And I said, really? She goes, yes. I had this gift, and everybody got a little piece of paper and it had a number, and I so happened to pick Eric's number. And it was a huge doll, made out of cloth, and I still have that doll, and it's in one of my bedrooms. And I knew Stormy had something to do about that, but I'll never forget that. And over the years, James, I thought of Stormy. She's always been in my heart. And I loved her laughter. I mean, she could make me laugh. She could tell stories. I could go to her with my problems. She would help me. She was never condescending. Always from the heart. So I'll miss her too. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Stormy was one of the greatest grandmas I've ever had, and one of the only grandmas I've ever had. And she was always awake when I'm a morning person on the weekends on school days, I'm usually like, no, I don't want to get out of bed. But on the weekends, I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I always walk into her room, and it's either she's just laying in her bed or she's in her chair. And that always helps me, and that makes me feel better because nobody else wakes up at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I always played paper dolls, or I always played solitaire with her. And one of my favorite memories was when we were playing solitaire, and she was like, no, you can't move the card, that's cheating. And she totally forgot how to play the game. And she taught me most of the things I knew. She taught me how to do cursive, and she taught me how to read chapter books, and she was the greatest grandma I've ever had. Thank you.
That is my youngest daughter, Lillian, for those of you that didn't get a chance to meet her. So, and my oldest daughter, Ann Elizabeth, is here as well. So, does anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Please, Christine, come on up. Glad you can make it. You want to come up here, or you want to speak from there? Okay.
I taught Miss Stormye for 20 years, and she was not only the best teacher for the kids, but she taught me so much about patience and laughter in the classroom. On top of that, I used to give her a hard time about being my bonus mom, because I would go to the house and I would whine. And she'd laugh, and we'd start laughing, and my whining was gone. We laughed in the kitchen, we laughed around the dining room table. She was the most amazing friend that I think I've ever had in my life, because she'd call me out of the blue and we would talk for ridiculous amounts of time. She'd text me back. She didn't like texting, but she would. And we would just share our lives, and it was really hard for me when she moved up to you, because I couldn't get to see her. And a couple months ago, we were talking on the phone. We had made plans for this summer to get together. And all I can think now is she's looking down on my garden going, okay, go do dirt therapy. She was an amazing woman. And I don't think there's anybody whose life she touched that she didn't change with some form of joy.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen that have not had the pleasure, that is Christine Pogue, longtime friend and colleague of my mother's, and the sister I never knew I needed. So, that's, would anyone else like to deliver any comments? Please, come on.
I just wanted to say that my husband and I were taught by her. Okay. And Miss Simmons had sent it out on Facebook, and so I reposted it. And there was a ton of comments about her. And if you want, I'll read a few of them. There were stories and, pardon, I have to get glasses on. It says, had her as a teacher, she was great in her crazy sneeze. She was one of my favorite. This breaks my heart. And I put on there, I will never forget when she let us go to the bathroom. We all went to the bathroom, and there was trash on the floor. And of course, nobody picked it up, including me. And we walked in, she shut the door, and she pulled out this $5 bill, and she said, well, if somebody would have picked up that trash in the hallway, I'd have given them this $5 bill. And I was like, man, I missed it. Miss Robinson said she taught 6th grade students how to write their first research paper, including how to cite their sources and find credible information. She said, Katie Redfro said, I was just singing her praises to her son this week. Remember writing how to make a PB&J and her making one exactly what we wrote. I'll never forget it. Heaven gained a great one. And she said, Miss Seidel said, what a true role model as a teacher. I looked up to her, her methods, teaching style, and her excitement and sheer joy in working with young people. Sweet Stormye, eternal rest granted to her, O Lord, let the perpetual light shine upon her, and may she rest in peace. Adam Dovey said she was absolutely sweet and amazing. Everybody talked about how great she was. He said, I remember, Brian Adams said, I remember the how-to essays. Someone made one on how to get to the Coke machine, so the whole class attempted to make it to the Coke machine. We didn't get very far. She also taught us that there is not a comma after one nation. It's one nation under God. Don't pause. Anyway, she was a blessing.
Thank you so much for sharing those. I tried to get this in the advertiser for last Friday, but apparently I was a little late, so it should have been in yesterday's advertiser, which didn't give people a whole lot of notice. So that was my mistake. But we had some logistical issues. Yes, ma'am. Come on.
Just like quick, I was a neighbor, and
This is Patty, by the way.
I'm Patty Harris, and I was her neighbor. She was my neighbor, and her example to me. We would go over and share our life story, many travels, military, etc. And she always made me laugh. Again, and we shared about our grandchildren, and I was encouraged by her, as all of my grandchildren now, and one of them has been fostered and adopted. They're all taken out of school and will be home taught. I was a teacher at one time. And she encouraged me to read her books. And I enjoyed, and she's encouraging me now. And telling me that I have to.
Telling you to talk about it.
That I have to take care of these grandchildren and give them my life's example of teaching as she did for hers. And I truly appreciated that from her and the encouragement that she gave me. And I missed her as a neighbor and the talks we had.
Thank you, Patty. I appreciate those remarks. And I can tell you all, every one of you, I know all your faces. A couple of us met for the first time today, but I've seen you before, and I promise you, my mother cherished each and every one of your friendships. Sue, how are you doing? I'm glad you can make it. So.
My name is Susan Chapman, and Stormye was my oldest son's 6th grade teacher. But for the first 6 weeks of school, she called him Clarence, not Lawrence. We still to this day do not know why. And Mr. Loiselle was his coach. And usually after Little League games, my house was just around the corner from the ball field. So everybody would come over and we'd play cards and have a little bit of fellowship and some snacks to eat and so forth and so on. Both her and Harold were two friends of mine. So miss them both.
Thank you, Sue. Sue, they both loved you dearly too, and Sue has a special place in my heart. She was not mad at me when I broke the windshield on her car. And if she was, she didn't say anything. We were playing in the yard after ball practice one day, like she said, and I threw a pop fly up for Clarence and her younger son David to catch, and neither one of them missed it, and it landed right in the middle of her windshield. And so, yeah, I broke a few windows playing baseball. But would anyone else like to say anything? Please, yeah.
My husband's used to microphones, and he said, get up there. So, and Stormy and I hit it off right away when I moved to Bastrop. She made me feel at home, and especially in the teaching field. She helped me get the job in the 6th grade, because I started here in 4th grade, and that was not my favorite place to be. It was hard. But 6th grade, I've taught so many years, and Stormy and I were a little different. I was the rugged one who sat up there and said, you do this and you do this, and no, this is the way it is to be done. And Stormy would relax and say, okay, you need to smile a little more. And you need, when that boy is giving you a big trouble, you get over there and pat him. It's okay. It's okay. And she had a way with children that I learned a lot from her. And I'd been teaching quite a few years, and I learned a lot from her with dealing with students who needed a little more loving from a teacher because they might not have gotten so much of it at home. And she knew that when a student was acting up, that there was a reason, and you needed to, and she taught me to pray. You pray for that child, and things will be a whole lot better. But as far as the neighbor, did you live with her during the time of the rattlesnakes under the porch?
No.
Okay, well, I don't know how that story turned out, but the people were called that would come and take those snakes away, and they never knew they were there for the longest. There was a bunch of them, I remember that period of time, but they worked it all out, and I thought, oh, only this could happen to Stormy. and she life just went on. It was, I would have been hysterical. But anyway, this was her life, and she kind of got caught up with me though when she said, "I just found out you taught something that when my kids came to me, I was supposed to be teaching that." And you know what it was? It was outlining passages in a book. And she says, "I didn't have to teach that anymore. Thank you." But there is a mystery also. I don't know if anybody's aware of it. There is a mystery to Stormy. She was a writer, and she was published, and I could never get her to tell me her pseudonym. Nobody knows. And I said, "Well, what did you write about?" And she says, "Oh, it'd be stuff you wouldn't want to read." So I don't know what she was up to, but she said a lot of it was love stories. So I think she got real personal in those love stories. So she did not want anybody to know the real name who was writing these stories, but that was her. And I can see her in heaven today with a pad of paper and a writing, saying, "Oh, I could write about that. The angels are doing what?" And God, I adore you and I love you, and I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to be your daughter. Okay.
Now, Larry, Carolyn's just assertive like that at school, right? I don't know, just a little joke, a little preacher humor there. No, I'm not gonna, don't answer that, Larry. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to say or share? So, if not, I would like to thank all of you so much for coming and sharing your memories of my mom. I know she's watching this and laughing right along with all of you. And Carolyn, that secret goes with me to the grave. So I know what you're talking about, and that one's going with me. Yeah. So at this time, Kevin, if you'd come up and lead us in our second song, I'd appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
This world is not my home. This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. They're all expecting me, and that's one thing I know. My Savior pardoned me, and now I onward go. I know He'll take me through, though I am weak and poor, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Just up in glory land we'll live eternally. Every hand are shouting victory. Their song of sweetest praise drifts back from heaven's shore, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore.
All right, Kevin, thank you for leading the singing. I appreciate that. My mother loved those songs. At this time, I have a video that I would like to play. The video is lengthy. It's between around 25 minutes long, but this is her life in pictures. So, thank you. Thank you all. I know that was long. Thank you for humoring me. There were a lot of pictures. There was a lot of life to squeeze in there. So this time I would like to invite Larry Foster to come up and give a homily. Thank you.
Paul, James, y'all have reasons to be proud. Stormye was a Christian, and her life is not finished. And she is experiencing now love in its fullest capacity, the love of God in His presence. And while we live on this earth, we experience love in different ways. And we've talked about it and know that she was a loving person. But we look forward to a day when we have the barriers removed and we can enjoy the love of God in its fullest. In Isaiah, the 40th chapter and verse 31, we read, "But they who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not grow weary. They shall walk and not faint." I'm 87, and when I try to run, I just lean forward a little bit. And I tried to walk the other day a little distance and found that my hips were aching, and it was not pleasurable. But it will be pleasurable again. I'd like just to share, just for a few seconds, the joys that she is going to experience, and it's in process. And we don't know God's timing, exactly how He works, but we know and have glimpses of what is in store for her and for those who love Him. There are promises that we will be able to share life again and share it with a host of heavenly beings and heavenly people and with God. And there will be a whole host of people there to enjoy this together, and we will have plenty of time to talk and share our experiences and to see people that we thought we would never see again. The Apostle Paul tells us that he's been there and seen things that are beyond our ability to conceive and understand. He speaks of this in 2 Corinthians. We are blessed so much by God on earth, but it's all in preparation for the blessings that we will receive when we receive our heavenly home. We have promises that if we're faithful with our love for God, He will be faithful to us. In 1 Corinthians 2:9, Paul tells us that there are pleasures and that there are blessings that are beyond our comprehension, awaiting each one of us as we look forward to a day when we go and be reunited with Him in heaven. Peter tells us that there's a day coming, and this is in 2 Peter 3, that this universe will be dissolved and that a new one will be created, a new universe. And we may, in fact, be on hand to see it happen in God's presence with Him. And when it says a new one, it's not talking about a new paint job for this place, but a complete new creation. And we look forward to that. In 2 Corinthians 5:1, we read, "For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Here indeed we groan, and long to put on our heavenly dwelling, so that by putting it on, we may not be naked and found naked. For while we are still in this tent, notice the body we live in right now is a worn-out tent, but the one we're getting is a building made with God by his own hands. So we look forward to that day to be with him with a new body that is compared to this one, and in comparing it, it's as a tent to a mansion structure. I'd like to close with just the thought of Jesus and knowing that we'll be with him, and that he says, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me, for in my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. But now I go to prepare a place for you, that I might receive you unto myself." We have this blessing to look forward to, and Stormy's beginning to enjoy it now. Thank you for allowing me to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Larry. Appreciate you sharing from the Word with us. We had a third song planned, but I think we're going to go ahead and forego that. As I was sitting here listening to Larry, I happened to glance over his shoulder and see these words on the ladder of Christian graces here. And as I looked at those words, I couldn't help but think about how my mother embodied each of those. It may be no accident that those words are up here today. It certainly wasn't planned, but serendipitous. I would like at this time to ask if they would, one of the elders, to come close us out in a prayer, if they feel they could do so. Ozzy, would you mind?
Let us pray. Then, Father, come to you once again. Thank you for so many blessings. We thank you for the life of Stormye, Loiselle. Then, Father, we just thank you for all the things she have given and left on this earth, Lord, to cherish like a son, her grandkids, memories, Lord. Then, Father, just be with us and bless us, Lord. Let us know that we all down here to make disciples for you and ministers and make things better on this earth. Then, Father, just be with us and bless us as we dismiss today. Thank you once again for the life of Stormye. Be with the family, Lord, as they go. And we continue to pray for this family as they go through the days without their mother and grandmother. And Father, just be with them and bless them. Thank you for all the words that were said today, Lord. Maybe someone was encouraged from what was said, and may continue to serve you in their life. As we close this prayer, Lord, just be with us and bless us as we go back for a fellowship meal today, Lord. Just be with us and bless us. Let us enjoy each other's company. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Ozzy, for those words and that prayer. Everyone, please, if you have the time, I'd like you to make your way back to the fellowship hall. Just when you find a clock, take a right and then take a quick left, and you'll see the tables and should smell the food. But please go back there, get something to eat, sit for a while, let me come and thank you again for coming and chat with you for a little while. So please, let's make our way there now.